This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for May 18th, 2022.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back again, beloved community, with yet another installment of our Water Wednesdays webcast by the People's Water Board Coalition. I'm here today with my host, Valerie Jean Blakely, and our behind the scenes people, our tech guy, Lou Novak, and commenter, Rosalind Walker. And today, people, I have a very, very special guest, a staunch advocate in the fight for water equity. She is working tirelessly in Lansing for all of our communities, and we are happy to have her here to come today to talk about the bottled water loopholes and what that means for us as residents. And today we have the special honor of having State Representative Rachel Hood here with us today. Thank you so much for being here today.
Nicole, it's great to see you. And I had the pleasure of meeting Valerie today as well. Wonderful to see your team and be with you today.
Thank you.
We're just so grateful that you took the time to come and talk to us today, because it's a really important conversation. We want people to know the folks that are really, really fighting for Michigan groundwater and protecting it here in Michigan. So thank you for that work. It's a short show.
It's my honor. I'm a longtime advocate for clean water and a big groundwater and stormwater nerd. So I get really excited about these topics in a way that most people don't, I'm afraid. But when I share my experiences and the opportunities that we have to protect our water resources here in Michigan, I see that excitement translates. So it's good to be here.
Thank you. You know, it's a short show, so we're going to jump right in with the questions so that we can get the info out there. Can you tell us a little bit about the bill that you introduced to protect groundwater?
Yeah, so my bill is part of a 3-bill package on the public trust and groundwater protection. And my bill addresses the loophole that was written into the Great Lakes Compact that allows water to be diverted in small containers. It's called the bottled water loophole, and it allows waters to be diverted from our watersheds and from our groundwater supply at no cost to the companies taking that water in containers smaller than 5.7 gallons. So that is essentially like your water cooler container, all the way down to your plastic water bottle.
So the corporations are really just allowed to take however much they want and not pay for it.
Yeah, and the history of that is real interesting. I think really important, if you'll bear with me for a minute.
Please.
In 2008, and also relevant to Detroiters, so I want to touch on this. In 2008, you'll recall there was a brownout that impacted the country from Chicago to New York, and southern Michigan was impacted by that. Our energy grid failed, and consumers across southern Michigan were left without access to water, because when we lose energy production, we also lose our capacity to treat and distribute water through our municipal systems. So that happened to be around the same time that the Great Lakes Compact was being negotiated. The 8 Great Lakes states and Canada had come together and agreed to protect our surface waters in the public trust so that we would not see large-scale diversions across the Great Lakes. Michigan agreed to that under the leadership of Jennifer Granholm. And then each state and province for the Canadians was sent back with some homework to do from those international negotiations. And that homework was focused on ratifying laws to protect your groundwater in the public trust. And it was necessary for each of those entities to do that separately because each jurisdiction, each state has different geology. And based on that geology, there are different technical needs across the Great Lakes Basin. Well, what happened is that Nestle was standing itself up in Mecosta County, and the lawsuit for Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation versus Nestle had just pulled away our right through the Michigan Environmental Protection Act to protect our water resources, regardless of standing, financial standing, or health standing, requiring that we meet federal standing requirements in courts as citizens to protect our water. And so in a 1-2 punch, Nestle then also negotiated to have Governor Granholm stall the groundwater protection negotiations in favor for the receipt of bottled water to citizens across southern Michigan to get through that week of brownout. So what we saw happen in that moment was a deafening blow to our groundwater protections in Michigan in 2008. And then after the 1-2 punch, the Mackinac Center hopped on to battle more. I shouldn't be using these violent references, but I will say it nonetheless.
It's violence against us all. It's fair. It's violence.
Lack of access to water, lack of access to water protections is violence, right?
Yeah.
And so, so the Mackinac Center then created this spin job and narrative that the public trust was going to take away freedom and in water use from the agricultural community, which is absolutely the opposite of what the public trust does. The public trust empowers individuals to protect their own water resources, even if it's very difficult to prove standing. And standing is that requirement of the courts that an individual is able to prove direct harm in a particular case. So a financial loss or a health loss or some other kind of substantive disruption to your life. But we all know that water moves, it is dynamic. A plume that, could be in northern Kent County and full of PFAS could migrate to southern Kent County through dynamic aquifers over time. And somebody could, show up to fight that and may have significant difficulty proving standing because of the nature of our natural resources and ecosystems. So that foundation, that cornerstone of the Michigan Environmental Protection Act, which was established in the 70s, was the first of its kind. Michigan was at the avant-garde under the leadership of law attorney Joseph Sachs at U of M and fearless leader Joan Wolfe from the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, where I was honored to serve as director for 10 years before serving in the legislature. These folks fought for the Michigan Environmental Protection Act. The cornerstone of it was that any citizen of Michigan could work to protect their right to clean water and access to natural resources, regardless of standing. That MEPA, then became a national model and was the environmental law framework that created the National Environmental Protection Act and similar state acts across the country. And those policies really swept the nation after, Rachel Carson and, the beginning of the modern environmental movement and Silent Spring and, the rebirth of awareness of the human connection to the health of our natural environment. And then, more recently in 07 and in 08, picked apart in order to weaken those laws by in Michigan, a very far right conservative Supreme Court.
After all that work, years and years and years of fighting for the people, for them to be able to just turn around and take that away is really disheartening and frustrating.
It was more than a decade of work to ratify the Great Lakes agreements, and we've been stuck in a spin cycle since then, with extreme rhetoric and an issue that's really complex.
I'm glad we got that background, because so many people that I meet on a daily basis that I talk to about these issues thinks this is just like something that just popped up out of nowhere. They don't realize how long-standing that the fight for water has been an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's only going to get bigger. So time to get these bills done. Yeah,
get them pushed all the way through. Kind of where are we sitting with the bills? Where are they sitting at? Are they just sitting in on the office
stuck in committee while we sit here and wait? to quote our that old song about the bill on Capitol Hill. Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
And this is my second cycle where these bills have been stuck in committee, and I think we've been fighting for this package since at least 2010, when then Representative, now Michigan Public Service Commissioner Dan Scripps introduced the Public Trust for Groundwater bill.
Are the corporations kind of standing in the way of this at all? Is it obvious? Can you see that they're, are they the bottled water industry? What kind of role are they playing in keeping this just kind of sitting idle, these bills sitting idle?
If they are playing a role, it's very behind the scenes. To be honest, I think the larger player in this is the Mackinac Policy Center, influencing my colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
Okay.
So essentially, the corporation doesn't have to do the work. I have not yet seen Blue Triton, formerly Nestle Corporation, here in Lansing lobbying. But that doesn't mean they aren't here having quiet conversations with certain people.
They certainly have always. And we saw this when Governor Snyder was governor. They've always bought and paid for the Mackinac Council. It's just always. Those folks have always been bought and paid for by industry and corporations. And we see that fighting pipelines that are running through the Great Lakes and all of that. It's just they're able to really buy and pay for those things. And I'm sure that the corporations are doing the best that they can to make sure that they're buying the right people.
That's ironic that we mentioned the Mackinac Policy Center, because they have an upcoming event in June, and we had worked tirelessly with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib to set up the Michigan-led delegation, and we had them coming out doing a tour of places that have been significantly impacted, like Benton Harbor and Flint and Detroit. And ironically, it may not go through now because the representatives from the federal government that were supposed to come by are now going to that event.
The Mackinac Policy Council?
Yes.
Oh, I think you're referring to the Mackinac Policy Conference, which is actually a conference of the Detroit Chamber, is the formal host.
Yes. So I thought that was really ironic that they kind of scheduled.
Nicole, I'll be there on Mackinac Island, so send me with some posters and we'll get activated for you.
Definitely.
Well, that'd be great.
It would be awesome.
We've only actually been to the Mackinac Policy Council once, but we pretended to be somebody else and we disrupted it because we were trying to get Line 5 shut down. And it was in the middle of it was in the middle of the mass Detroit water shutoff. So we had signs for water shutoffs here in Detroit, and then of course shut down 5.
Right.
They didn't let us stay for long. It wasn't one of those things.
Man, all that driving.
Yeah. So how will this help, like, the people across Michigan, right? How will this the bills introduced help, like, the people across Michigan, and what kinds of things can they do to really push for them? What can people do?
Well, I think that if this bill were signed into law, that we would see stronger efforts to keep our water resources in our watersheds. Some companies do this already, just from a transportation and logistics standpoint. For instance, Coca-Cola is a great example. They produce their product across the nation in regions, and then deliver the product across a region. And, while it's not scientific, because it's all dependent on, where that Coca-Cola ends up after going through your wastewater system, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It does, keep the water resources relatively closer to home. So I think we would see stronger efforts to shore up our understanding of where products are going. And ultimately, it would mean that moving into the future, we would not be vulnerable to large scale, small container diversion of our resources. And that's what we're vulnerable to now.
Did Coca-Cola do that on their own, or were they forced by legislation or some other?
I think they're forced by their business model and the logistics of delivering products across the manufacturing and delivering products across the country. They certainly are a company that have taken some steps to integrate sustainable practices. And I'm sure somebody at Coca-Cola would be offended with me saying some steps. It's, it's not a zero impact product, but I appreciate the steps they have taken. I think it's an important point of education. Myself, it's an interesting conundrum, as I am a co-owner through marriage of a brewery. And it's interesting to see Bell's and Founders having recently been purchased by international companies. And I think that represents an interesting view of water diversion as well. What does it mean to be a global source of tasty craft beers?
Right.
For me and my husband, we made a pact, and it hasn't been challenged yet, but we largely are, a restaurant and brewery, and most of the product that we serve is sold in Grand Rapids and consumed in the greater Grand Rapids region. We do have some distribution over to Metro Detroit, but not a lot. Our distribution has never really taken off, but we decided early on that if it did, and if the company grew to such a point that we were looking at sending product outside of the Great Lakes watershed, that we would then need to look at our ethics and maybe step back and play a different role in the company. So, those are things that I've been caused to think about on a couple of different levels as a committed advocate for our Great Lakes. And, I think this remains a very important bill, an important part of the conversation. And I personally, as an ethical business owner or aspiring ethical business owner, because, you're always working at that, want to make sure that I do the right thing. I hope others will as well in the interim until we do have these protections.
That would be great if businesses were able to kind of come together and really come up with a plan to
I do want to touch on an investment that we've just made to advance our understanding of groundwater issues in the state budget. I think this is an important part of the conversation as well, and it translates to what people can do to help with this issue, which I think is one of our next questions. So recently we invested, I believe it's 30 million in the Eagle budget to invest in a geological study that would prepare us with more data to better manage our groundwater resources, to better understand groundwater flow, and then help large scale water users, whether it's, a lot of these folks are ag users, to provide them with more data, more meaningful insights into water levels and sustainability of their water withdrawals. This is a critical investment that has been delayed for quite some time. And so I'm very excited to see this move forward. And then I am hopeful that it also goes hand in hand with further investment in our water withdrawal assessment tools and in, stronger practices for groundwater withdrawal regulation, as well as best management practices for ag and water sustainability. Here, as just because we're in the Great Lakes, it doesn't mean that we are not vulnerable to drought here in West Michigan, and then also some spots in mid-East Michigan. We are seeing signals, red flags are being pulled up that our groundwater resources have been overused. The story in Ottawa County, which is next to Kent County, the greater Holland area, is that blueberry farmers have used a significant amount of water over many decades, and now they are pulling up brackish salt water from their depleted aquifer. So significant challenges in that community as they looked, towards ways to sustain, those blueberry farms. And then also as they look at the consequences of that withdrawal, that aggressive withdrawal combined with tiling of drain tiles for agricultural facilities and farms has led to a nutrient issue in Lake Mackinac, which is a recreational lake that has an extreme algae problem because that groundwater has been pulled up, spread over farms. It flows then into these tile systems carrying nutrients that have been applied, for the purpose of growing, as well as soil, right into Lake Mackinac, feeding this, warming algae issue.
And it's that way. We have algae problems throughout Michigan because of that, right?
Saginaw Bay is another problem area. And then, of course, we're all familiar with Erie and the Maumee River watershed, which is a contributor to the issues in Lake Erie that affect drinking water access for the people of Toledo.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that people understand that how connected the algae is, how it's connected to our groundwater, and how all of those things. We're just, we're not using best practices. So of course, this is what we end up with. Right?
Yeah. great Rachel Carson quote, in nature, nothing exists alone. And so we often find when we study these issues that they are tied to each other in surprising ways. These ecosystems are so interdependent with us and our uses. And smart practices like micronutrient delivery on farms and no-tilling and buffer strips to capture stormwater and recharge that groundwater supply are critical pieces of this whole narrative around water and water justice. And it's interesting because it's through that lens that we begin to pull, the impacts of the urban water access issues and the rural agricultural connections. And it's here that we see that blue thread that connects us all across geography, across our communities, across our values as well. So I'm really excited about some major federal and state investments in nutrient management as well. And I do sit on as the minority vice chair for the appropriation subcommittee for the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development and DNR. So through that space, I'm able to work on that side of the issue.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. It's just such important work. And if folks can actually call their legislators and tell them that they want these bills pushed, they want them off the committee floor and pushed all the way through, and that's the one thing that we can agree on. All people from Michigan, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle or what your ideologies are.
Yeah.
Water connects us. Water is the one thing that we can all agree on. Like, no, we don't want pipelines running through our water. No, we don't want, PFAS and corporations dumping and depleting our groundwater. That's something that we can all agree on as Michigan. It's the one thing that connects us.
These bills have been sent to the House Committee on Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation, and Representative Gary Howell is the chair of that committee. So citizens who are interested in this should get to know Representative Howell and start to influence him. And I encourage folks to reach out beyond the scope of their own neighborhoods to find voices who can influence Representative Howell. Again, this is a rural issue. This is a suburban issue. This is an issue in our cities. So let's help Rep. Howell and members of the Committee on Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation help them see these connections.
That's our homework. That she gave us marching orders. That's our homework.
Yeah. That's
we appreciate
want all of our viewers to do. If it just starts with your representative and spread it out wide and far. And if you need any more information, we want all our viewers to feel free to contact the People's Water Board Coalition's Facebook page or go to peopleswaterboardcoalition.org.
Yeah, we definitely want to be able to help folks in any way possible to get these bills pushed. Please share this video out. We're going to share some information about these bills in the comment section down below after we close up. And again, just really thank you for this work and for all the things that you do to protect Michigan water and to make the world a better place, Rep. We appreciate you. And you, of course, your time. We appreciate your time deeply for taking the time to be with us today. And
I appreciate all of that. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you as citizen activists and in those paid roles. We don't do enough to honor you and your hard work organizing. And I feel like the best way I can do it is to have bills that reflect your voices. So it's my honor to serve and to work here in Lansing on behalf of the People's Water Board and other groups interested in water justice and environmental justice. Thank you so much for the work that you do as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a perfect way to wrap us up. Until next time, my friends, take care of each other, look out for each other, and try to stay afloat. Bye.